I picked up this little go-kart from a neighbor, and they asked me if I'd take a look at it, see if I could get it running. I guess their kids enjoy running around on this, and they said that it won't run anymore. And it's had a hard life. But basically, it's just a small engine like you'd find on your lawnmower, pressure washer, a mini bike, or whatever. I see it's got a broken pull cord. It also has electric start. We're gonna take a look at it, see what's wrong with it, and see if we can get it to run. And I hope it helps you with your small engine troubles. Let's do it. First thing I'm gonna do is get this battery straightened out. I'm gonna have to trim this screw down because it's just hanging loose here. So I won't take up your time with that, but I'm gonna go trim this and be right back, tighten this up, and we'll see if we got any fire. All right, I trimmed up this bolt, and if you want to know how to do that, cut it so that it doesn't cross the threads or mix up the threads. I got a real short video on how to do that. Tight enough for testing. Now, I'm not going to worry about it even running at this point. I just want to see if it'll turn over. And I might have to fix the pull start. But to do that, we'll turn the key on. That's for the lights down here. Here's the horn. That's not a good sign. The horn doesn't work. And the choke cable's busted. Let's see, I need to put this in neutral. And might have to have the brake pushed. Let me try pushing. This is the start button here. We got nothing. Absolutely nothing. Let me try pushing the brake down. Nothing. Okay, just to see if the engine's froze up, if the starter works, I'm going to bypass everything. So I've set up the battery with jumper cables, negative and the positive, and I've got the ground set up to the block of the engine, and I'm going to take the positive and touch it. There's a cable that comes to the starter from the battery and then goes over to the starter. I'm going to touch that connection right here, see if I can get the starter to work. And there we go. So the engine's not froze up, the starter works. Now I just have to figure everything else out. But that's a positive sign. Next, I'm going to open up the air filter, which is right here. And take the air filter off. And I'm going to spray some ether in the throat of the carburetor. Go ahead and hit the starter again and see if it'll kick over. I'm going to hit the starter again. Hey! How about that? So because of the way all that was acting, I'm going to look for a fuse, and I just went and looked, and I think they put the fuse underneath this cover. Here's our red wire, and we might find it in here. Could have a blown fuse. There's a spare in there, and it doesn't look blown to me, but it does look kind of corroded here. I turn the key off. It is kind of cloudy down in here. I'll show you how to check it with a multimeter real quick. And of course, you probably know this, but on your fuse, it tells how many amp fuse it is. So you want to make sure whatever you take out, you put back in. Protects all the wiring in the electrical system. All right, I got my cheap multimeter here, and we'll put it on ohms. We're checking for continuity here. Put it on 20,000. And if you've got an open circuit, meaning a break in the wire, you'll get a reading of 1. If you touch them together and there's no break in the wire, then you get a reading of 0. And here's our fuse. I'll touch one end to one end, the other end to the other. Oh! The fuse is good. So we've got a wiring problem in there somewhere. Okay, so we know the engine will turn over and fire, but we've got no power when we turn the key on. So I'm going to take that dash apart and see if I can figure out the electrical problem on this. And I don't know where my good test light is, but this tests for 12 volts. So I hook that up to ground, and there's a little light bulb in here that'll light up. And I'll just test, make sure it's working. Yeah, she's lighting up. So I'm going to start tracing this and see where we have power and where we don't. See if I can figure out the missing link. And I'm going to start with the starter here. I'm going to hook the ground up to the block of the engine. And here's where the hot lead comes straight off the battery over to the starter. I'll check that. And yes, that's working fine. And of course, the other lead that ignites the starter is right here. And I'd have to have the key on for that to work. And I don't have the key on right now, so that would be off. And just so you can see this setup, here's the line directly from the battery, right here. And then the one just above it, right there, is the one that should get hot when you turn the key and push the start button to ignite the starter. When I was just jumping straight from the battery to this is when I got it to turn over. So I know my problem isn't right there, but I'll go ahead and turn the key. I just turned the key and touch this lead, and I'm going to push the start button at the dash panel, and of course we got nothing. So I need to trace the problem back from here. Okay, before I go any further, I'm going to see if it'll run. Maybe these people are farmers and it's just farm kids riding this around. It's pretty beat up. The pull cord on the recoil's broken, and maybe they don't care about all the electronics. So I'm going to fire it up, see if it'll work. I'll have to jump the starter, and if it does, and they just want it to run and they're not worried about all the other stuff, I don't want to take it further than they want to go. So I'm going to put a little fuel in here, and we'll see if it'll run. I'm going to push a little fuel through. It's been sitting for a year. Got the fuel on at the carburetor, and there's a petcock right here underneath the tank. I've got that on. I'm going to turn the key on, and let's see if it'll run. I'm just going to jump across those two studs that I showed you on the starter. I'll try a little ether. Carburetor might be gummed up. I'm gonna open up this little drain plug here and see if we got fuel in the bowl. Shut the fuel off. There. There's fuel running out of there. There is debris in the bottom of this bowl, but we do have fuel in there. I think I should pop that carburetor off and clean it real quick. It's not a big job. Turn the fuel off. Fuel off. And the spring hooks right here. Let's pop that out. And then the throttle. Oh, let's take her over to the workbench, clean it real quick. Pop the bowl off. Take the float off. There's the needle. And the main jet's right in there. Just want to make sure that's all clean. Now this main jet is brass, and I've modified this screwdriver just a little bit, but you kind of only get one chance of getting this out. This looks pretty clean. There. You want to be real careful. You don't just bust that and then you're stuck. And I don't know if you can see that brass right there, but that's the top of the main jet, and you can push down on that to get it started. There we go. And she came out. You can see that such a little orifice there. Push a little wire through there. Wouldn't take much to clog that. And I don't know if you can see, but all these little ports here have to be clean. So I run a wire through there. And I'm going to shoot some carb cleaner through there. I like to hold my finger over the end of that, and then it'll shoot out all these little ports here. Good. And also hit that and all these other little ports right here. I'm going to open up this little bowl for the fuel shutoff. Looks all right. Just shoot some carb cleaner through. This is where the fuel line comes in. Good. And then underneath here, it's a little pilot jet, and that could be the problem with this. The way it's running. And you just pop this out. Teeny, teeny, tiny hole there. Really affects the way this runs. If your machine's not idling or running right, this is a critical thing right here to clean. This is such a little hole. There, I got through it. That was clogged up. and a tight fit. I think we got her. There we go. Critical. And this is just your idle screw here. It's right about there. Put our main jet back in. And the narrow side goes in first, just like this. Drop that in. And you want to go counterclockwise on this till you hear that click. You don't want to cross thread this. It should go in real smooth and easy. And then you don't want to crank down on it once it's in. Just bottomed out, there you go. And you can see the top of that main jet sticking up there. All right. And that carb cleaner, these rubber gaskets, you want to be careful. That'll distort the rubber, the carb cleaner. I try to stay away from it. On this, I'm going to screw it in and see where it's set. There's a half turn. 1, 1.5, 2, 2.25. Nice and clear. Make sure this tip's clean. It is. Put it right back in where it was. And when you bottom these out, don't crank down on it just till you feel it bottom out. Right there. So we'll go half, 1, 1.5, 2.25. Right where it was. And we're all clean. Put our float back in and the needle. And these needles, this has a brass base and a rubber tip on this needle. So I don't want to spray that rubber tip with carb cleaner. Just slide that right down in there. There we go. And at the end of the season, when you're done using the go-kart, it's always good. Shut the gas off at the tank, and you can shut it off. There's a shut off near the carburetor, but you can take this screw out and drain this float bowl, which will keep these from getting all gummed up. Let's go put it back on. Just slides down in there. We'll put our spring back in. Good. Hook our fuel line back up. Make sure you get this on right, otherwise you're going to cover up those ports. And when you put this on, that little breather has to go, hose, it goes right in there. Something's missing on this choke here. was wondering why there wasn't any resistance. All right, but we can give her a try. Open the fuel up, see if it'll start, and run. I gotta turn the key on. Think. Needs a little choke. Kill switch works. We'll get back at it when the sun's back up. Making progress. I disconnected the battery. The next thing I want to do is pull the starter solenoid off. This is the starter here. The solenoid's sitting right underneath it. I took this nut off, and this is the wire that goes over to the battery. That takes power to the solenoid, and there's a switch in here. There's power there. And when the start button's pushed, there's a magnet in here that completes the connection. Comes over to this post here and engages the starter to start the engine. I want to see if that's bad. There it is. So let's take it over to the bench and test it. Okay, to run this test, don't pay attention to these colors. This is the ground on the battery, and I ran it over to the base of the solenoid. This is the positive on the solenoid, and I've got the positive hooked up here. And again, don't pay attention to the color on the end of these clips. But when I touch this to that solenoid switch should click in there. That magnet should click, and it should complete the connection there. And it does. And the other way to test that is we're going to take our multimeter. When that circuit is open, we're going to put it on ohms, turn it on. If you've got an open circuit, it's going to read 1 here. And if you've got a complete connection, you're going to read 0. So right now, doesn't matter which ones I touch here, but right now I touch these, and that switch is not completed. Well, if I hook this back up where you heard that click, so I'll hook this back up. That's engaged now. We should get a reading of 0, meaning that switch is working. And there we go. So we're good. That's a good solenoid. That's not the problem. So I'll put this back in. We know we've got a good starter. We know we got a good solenoid. I'm going to check this wire for continuity from the start button on the dash to here, where it connects to the solenoid. So I'm going to hook up a wire and then take this up to the dash and hook it up to the wire on the dash and make sure there's continuity, meaning not a break in the wire from here up to the dash where the start button is. All right, here we are. Here's the start button right here. It's not working. And I unplugged the wire that goes to that right here. As you saw back there, it's the yellow and red wire. And that goes into this side. So I'm going to check for continuity from this wire I just hooked up to there. And if there's not a break in the wire, I'll get a reading of 0. If there is a break, I'll get a reading of 1. So I've got my multimeter here, and it doesn't matter which one you hook up to which. So I've got that hooked up, and I'm going to turn this on, and we'll go ahead and touch this other wire, and we should get a reading of 0. And we do! Well, hey! That means there is no break in that. So I'm a little confused. There must be a safety switch or something that's keeping this button from igniting the starter. Dig a little deeper. And it could be a bad switch right here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to touch those two wires together, see if that'll engage the starter. Okay, I got some needle nose pliers here. And I'm just going to touch these two connections here if I can and see if that'll do it. I'll turn the key. Nothing. All right, I'm going to run one more test. Now we know the wire, this yellow and red wire, has continuity all the way up to the starter button. The black wire must be the hot wire tied into the battery somehow. So what I'm going to do to test that is I'm going to run a wire from the positive side of the battery up to the black wire and see if that starter button will work then. So I'm going to slide this in the back of the black side of this wire right here. Slide it in the back side, and I am going to hook up a jumper wire from the positive side of the battery to that wire up there and see if that fixes our problem. And now I'll go up and push that button. Hey, how about that? So the problem is that black wire. So this black wire here should be hot, and it's not. But that jumper made it hot, this black wire right here. And I don't want it hot all the time like I just set it up. So I am going to find a hot wire coming off the key here, maybe this red wire. When the key is turned on, I'm going to find out which wire's hot, and I'm going to make a jumper from there to this black wire, hook them together, and that should fix that whole problem. Here's what I've done. I ran a jumper wire on the back of this plug, and that comes from, the back side comes from the key switch, and I ran a jumper between the red wire and the black wire. So the key's off, the horn works, the starter works. Let's check the lights. The lights work. It won't hurt anything to leave that hooked up like that because there's no power being drained. And if somebody comes and tries to start it, it won't start with the key off. But if I turn the key on, let's see if it'll start. I guess I'm gonna have to choke it. Let's check it. Oh yeah. So I think that's a simple fix for all the problems. If I hit the kill switch, it still works. Horn, lights work, and the key should shut it off. So that takes care of everything right there. I think there's a short in that key switch. But I'm just going to go with the jumper wire. I'm going to make a real small one and I'll tape it up with black tape so it doesn't short. And we'll clean this up, get it back together, and she should be good to go. I made a little loop right here with this wire to tie the red wire and the black wire together so we can get power. And I got it far enough down in there. I'll tape that up and it shouldn't tie in or affect any of the other wires. And not crazy tape. If somebody needs to get in there and work on it. And we'll put the dash back on. And I found the handle for the recoil. And I'm going to go ahead and try to fix this. Let's take it over the workbench real quick. This didn't lose too much cord, and I think it's got a long one. So I'm just going to take this one out, clean it up, and reattach it. Not too bad a shape. Now what they usually do is bring this through and then put a loop in there and pull it tight, but that takes up more rope. So I'm just going to tie a knot. I think that'll suffice. But if you want to see a video on how to set up a recoil, I've got one in the top right corner you can check out. I guess I could tighten it up a little bit. You pull that up through here, and we can take her around. Whoops. Pull it up through here, take it around. Pull it through, and we've gone one loop tighter. This thing's awful dirty. Lubricate it a little bit. Give her a little choke. How about that? Another option for them. Let's take this pre-filter off, clean it up. She's awful dusty. Mercy, mercy, mercy. Hee-hee. I'm gonna blow these out, wash this out, and put it back on. Pressure wash this, and she should be good to go. New filter wouldn't hurt. But I got this one cleaned up pretty good. Good, good. Fuel's off. Gotta put this shock back on, the bolt for that. Fill up the tires, and a pressure wash. We aired up the tires, changed the oil, fixed the broken pull cord on the recoil, took the carburetor off, cleaned that all up, fixed the electrical problem, and I think she's ready to go. Just needs a good cleaning, and we can return it to the owners. Well, there she is, all cleaned up and ready to go. I hope this video was a help to you and maybe you learned something. If it was, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And I look forward to helping you with other projects online.